Okay, so from this point, we're ready for fretting. You can see that I've already cut down the fret dots that we went over last lesson and sanded those down and clamped it in place the headstock and gave it one coat of polyurethane, so we're ready to start fretting now. See that I've already got, over here off the side, I got 20 pre-cut frets ready to go in, so let's go ahead and do that. Doesn't really matter if you start down up top here at the headstock or start down here. Just have to be start down here because that's where I clamped it at. So I kind of just leave the fret wire hanging over just a little bit. This type of hammer that I'm using here is a dead blow hammer. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but it's got these little slugs inside of it or something, but or sand. It sounds like sand. Not quite sure, but it doesn't damage the frets, and it gives a nice hit to the frets to get them to set down in there in place. So. Basically, I'm just fretting the area that's actually clamped in by the vise. I think it gives it a lot more stability. If I was to start fretting out this way, then the neck would start to flex, and any frets that I set in, they could cause, the vibration could cause them to come unseated. So I just typically stay within the, like a little work envelope here of the vise itself, and just shift it as I go along. Reset this one. It's a little short on the other end. Oh, one thing I did want to talk to you guys about real quick is when I first started doing this, I did I wasn't quite sure whether or not to put an adhesive of some sort to keep the fret down in there, keep it seated. And in my honest opinion, if your fret slot is cut thin enough to where you have a nice snug fit for the fret, then you shouldn't need any glue. Any type of material or adhesive that you use to put to help aid in keeping your frets in position. If well, once that adhesive adheres, if for some reason down the road you need to refret the neck, or maybe a fret gets damaged or whatever the reason, if you have to pull a fret out, that adhesive could damage the fingerboard itself. I've heard people recommend using like a 2-part epoxy filler, which kind of, if you are going to use something like this, which I really wouldn't, but this is just for repairs that I use, but I would get you an epoxy that has a long cure time. For instance, this one says it sets in 60 minutes, so you got a lot of time to play with it. But for the most part, I've heard people say that you just take a little bit of wood glue and dilute it somewhat with a little bit of water, and it makes for a good bond, and down the road, if you need to pull the fret out, it doesn't cause any damage or whatnot. So if I'm ever in a position where I need to do that, like I said, I would only do it if there was a lot of play, or if it felt like a fret wasn't quite setting right, if it kept popping loose. But for the most part, ever since I got the fret saw, it seems to do a nice slot to where the frets sit in nice and tight, so I haven't had the need to use any adhesives here lately, so I've been kind of fortunate. But for the most part, when I do, I use the diluted wood glue. Just kind of pour out a little, take a scrap piece of wood, set it up here, and pour out just a little bit of the wood glue on a piece of wood, and then I get like a little glass of water with an artist brush, kind of set it down in there, blend it up, kind of thin it out a little bit, and work it from there. Just thought I'd touch on that, but these frets are in place, and they're not going anywhere. Especially with building a cigar box guitar and watching the different videos and seeing different pictures of guitars on forums and whatnot. And there are just so many different ways that people have used fret material. It doesn't necessarily have to be fret wire. I've seen people use nails, toothpicks, you name it. If it's got the profile of a fret, it's been done probably. Even seen a guy that had he basically marked where his fret positions was going to be and started with like bale wire. Just kind of had it started up top here somewhere, and just kind of basically wrapped it around the neck and made sure that it came up in the exact position where the frets were. So it was like the whole entire neck was just wrapped in this bale wire. It was kind of a neat way of doing it. You kind of always are looking for for something out of the ordinary. A lot of people like to push that envelope to see what exactly they can create. And that's what's interesting about doing this. For the most part, that's the only reason why I really started making the kits, because I figure there's people out there that like to do this kind of stuff, but they just get really aggravated with fretting necks and building them. For the most part, that's probably about the biggest frustration out of building a cigar box guitar, is just getting the neck ready and getting it fretted and whatnot. So it's just kind of a way to where, people have an alternative to where if they didn't want to have to build up the neck and do all that kind of boring stuff, to just hop right in and get to the fun parts of the build. So from this point, you can see that I kind of flipped it and clamped it in, and down in here, got it right up just a little bit. So I'm going to take this file right here. It's kind of dusty right now because I use it to file down, smooth out parts of the wood and whatnot as well. But I'm just going to file the edges, start on this side, work my way down, and then flip it over. So basically at this point, just trying to get all these rough edges and barbed areas down. And even if it's up too high, the reason why I support it down low is to make sure that the fret stays in position and I'll work away from me, because I don't want to pull back because it could unseat the fret and bend the upper edge of it to where it's not sitting right at the corners, or it could kind of rock or something like that. So I just basically work away from me. And again, I haven't did a final polyurethane on this yet. So when I do get down and it is flush with the wood, I'll always kind of smooth it out, make sure that the side surface stays even. And then I'll give it a light sanding too when I'm finished up. This way is probably the best as far as to filing down the frets. I've tried all kinds of ways using end nippers and whatnot, and filing each one hand by hand. When I first started out, I think it took me forever, like 4 hours just to file down the fret of the neck. And this goes a lot quicker. And I'm kind of slowing down now because I'm explaining things as I go along, but for the most part, this does a heck of a lot faster. And beats doing them one by one. You just got all your ducks in a row and you're just hitting them all at once. You'll see as I get kind of down towards pretty much flush, then I'll do like a little back and forth motion to it. Because at that point, any chance of it, grabbing a hold of the fret and actually pulling it out of place has pretty much been eliminated. So as I run my finger across here, I can still feel some spots, but that's basically because I haven't did the 45-degree filing yet. So I'm getting a little bit of the rough that's up top. But for the most part, down where the fret goes into the fret slot, it's pretty smooth. So we'll flip the neck. Yeah, same thing with this side. You kind of just want to work it away to seal this in. The frets are a little bit higher. Just a little bit more work. At this point, you can kind of see that all the fret sides have been filed down. Nothing came unseated. Frets are still down in there. So now what we're going to do is give a 45-degree angle to the, give like a beveled edge to the sides of the frets here. Now this is what, when I first started doing these, was the most time-consuming, because I was doing each one at a time. And after trying out a few things, I think I found something that kind of worked out a lot better. Let me pause and reposition the camera here and get it to where you guys will be able to see everything I'm doing. Okay, so there's probably 100 different ways to do what I'm about to do, but this one is just something that I think is a lot faster and gets the same results. I'm basically going to start out with the sander right here. It's a 17-inch, paper ain't sticking there. It's a 17-inch sander, and basically as I set it in place, I'm just going to let it rest real lightly at kind of what I think to be a 45-degree angle. And without applying any pressure, I'm just going to kind of go back and forth with it. And just that slight little friction that being applied to the frets is going to work the sides of this fret down. The reason why I say don't press down on it is because if you do, these things are pretty sharp right here. If you press down too much, it's going to cut into your sandpaper. And usually, I just changed this one out. I don't know why it's not sticking. I just changed this one out, and usually a new sheet will do probably about 5 necks. So basically, right now it's just like a really long emery board, and you're just filing down the frets with it. So go ahead and show you here. Like I said, very little to no pressure, just kind of letting gravity do its thing. Again, I doubt it's going to be something that you can see right offhand. Try to clean this up a little bit here. See if I can zoom in a little bit. I don't know if you're going to be able to make that out or not. I'm going to do a couple different positions here to see if you might be able to see it. But again, you know, I still feel some rough spots to it, which is no big deal. Then I take my smaller sanding block here. I think this is 220 grit, I believe. And again, just kind of follow the same angle, and this is kind of just like a finish to finish up and get any additional excess that I may have on there. Okay, so that's pretty much how you get your beveled edge on the side portion of it. Really, at this point, as you're kind of doing it, you just kind of want to use your fingers as a guide. Make sure you're not feeling any sharp points or whatnot. You know, you'll feel a little bit of roughness to it, but that's going to sand down once we're going to the finishing portion of the actual frets themselves. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the video from here and finish up the other side and get it set to finish up the frets.